Rosalind Dutton, and I'm the Deputy Director for Records Management, and I'll be your facilitator today. Today's presentations on records management will include the following topics: forms, retention policies, and everything records management. Your presenter today is Doug Rollo. Doug is the Georgia State Archives Assistant Director for Records Management. He currently manages Georgia State Records Center and assists state agencies and municipalities with records consulting services to create, improve, and streamline their records program. Doug has over 35 years experience in records management, working in Colorado, Delaware, Missouri, and Georgia. Now, before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that all phones are on mute. If you have any questions, please type them into GoToTraining using the chat function that's located at the bottom right of your screen. Please click on the drop-down arrow next to all, entire audience, and select Organizer Only. We'll address all of the questions at the end, and we will be recording today's webinar, and we'll email copies to all attendees, and we'll also provide a link on our website. So at this time, I will turn the webinar over to Doug Rollo.
Thank you very much for having me. It is a pleasure to speak with everyone. We're going to go over quite a few things here, but I do have a question that is going to be a little bit rhetorical, but I want you to think about how long you keep your personal income tax records and why. And the most common answers that I normally get are 7, 15 to permanent records. Well, according to the IRS, they can audit you for 3 years. If they find something in those 3 years, then they can audit you as far back as you have records. So the whole point is, why should you have your records work against you? And that's the whole premise of the records management is keep your records as long as they're an asset and get rid of them before they're a liability. Okay. There we go. We're going to cover today is what is records management. We're going to talk about some common myths. We're going to talk about ways to track records, records policies, what is a record. We're going to talk a little bit about electronic records, hard copy records, and record supplies and destruction. Now, this description of records management we've picked up from Wikipedia. Now, normally Wikipedia is not complete, but this one's very, very complete. But the exception is that we have to also track records after we dispose of them so that we can answer the request for the open records request to tell folks when and how we destroyed the records and why. So that's, like I said, but that's what you need to do is you have to make sure that everything that you with your records is documented. Now, we need to start tracking records right from the creation of those records, not when they're boxed up and shelved. That way you know exactly who's touched the records, who's filed it, who's added to it, who's read it, and all that. Now, if they're confidential records, you also need to make sure you know who has access through the ethical wall. And then, of course, the destruction of the records when that time comes. Anything to do with a record during its life cycle and beyond is records management. Now, records management will save you time, it'll save you money, and it'll lessen your liability. And what I mean by that is when I was with one of the other agencies, we were going through and working with them and we had disposed that we were looking through timesheets and keeping them. And we found out that they had over 40 some odd years of timesheets. Well, according to the retention schedule at that time, we only needed to keep 6 years worth. Now, with that being said, we disposed of everything but 6 years. Well, the manager of the department called up and said, now, I've gotten a call from an attorney, and he wants 25 years worth of timesheets, and you, meaning me, threw them all away. Now, I kind of thought we worked on this together, but obviously not. But anyway, we called up the attorney and said, Mr. Attorney, this department has an up-to-date implemented retention program, and they can provide you with 6 years worth of timesheets. He said, fine, send them 6 years worth of copies. And the manager of the department said, yeah, but he'll call back later. So I checked back in with them in a few months, and they hadn't heard back from the attorney. And I checked back in 6 months and still haven't heard. And when I checked with them the final time, about a year later, she says, look, they haven't called back. And the whole point of it is most people get that you can't keep everything forever, but you can't dispose of things willy-nilly. You've got to be able to prove when and how that you need to do things. And one of the common misperceptions is that we are required to keep all records forever. And that's really not true. For example, birth records, we only keep 100 years. Death records, we keep 75 years. That's not permanent. It's a long time, and it should be because they're needed for that long, but they're not needed on a permanent basis. And the other things, some of the other things that we've also looked at is people are carrying and keeping copies. And we've seen that throughout the state where agencies will keep copies of citations and things of this nature or forms, and come to find out most of the time their copies are outdated. So if you don't need to keep a copy of something, please don't. It just makes it harder to find the information that you do need and when it's appropriate. And it's better to have records than not to have records. Well, our friends at Enron proved that to be not true because they disposed of everything. But being they disposed of it in a wholesale manner, they sort of hung themselves, and the judge threw the book at them. And if they would have just followed their own retention program, they would have still been in business today, although heavily fined. Now, this is one of my favorite cartoons, and the reason why we're talking about this is because a lot of people think that all records are kept digitally, and that's just not the case. Only about 15% of the records are actually stored digitally, but it is a growing area, and it is growing fast, but it's still, the majority of records are still stored on paper. But we will be talking in a little bit about scanning records. Now, here are some common myths that we also see quite a bit, is people tell me, oh, those aren't really company records. Those belong to me personally. Or they're non-records or they're unofficial records. I'm here to tell you, any records that you have that you were being paid, while those records were being created, those records belong to the agency. They are not yours. They belong to the agency. And so they are discoverable, and they need to be out there for people to use. Now, there are several ways of tracking records. One of them is the records management software, which is very specific and very expensive to put in, and so a lot of agencies don't use them. Now, if you have an Access program, or Access is an outstanding way to track records, but you need to make sure that your programmer understands exactly what you're looking for. I had my first records database done in Access, and it is still in use today. Now, a lot of the smaller agencies out in the counties use Excel because it's very flexible, it's very user-friendly, it's very easy to use to track where your records are. It's also an excellent way to track the records that you've disposed of. Now, we have seen some agencies use notebooks to track where their records are. The only problem with using notebooks is that notebooks get feet and they leave. And so you spend a lot of time looking for the notebooks where you wouldn't be doing that with Excel Access. And the worst possible scenario is memory. And let's face it, not everybody can remember where all the records are, and it is quite difficult, especially when staff changes, that the new staff doesn't necessarily know where the leaving staff have left the records. So, if at all possible, use Excel and Access to track your records, unless you have access to a records management software, of course. Now, most records are stored on hard drives and tape drives, and that's appropriate. Some drives are unreliable. It's fine for transferring a record, but they're not set up and designed for storing records. Wireless devices, such as cell phones, tablets, and the like, are also not a good place to store the departmental and the agency records, primarily because they're very compact, they can be easily lost, or somebody can appropriate those devices. And the thing that we see a lot every year between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we hear stories about agencies, federal agencies, usually the Social Security Administration, where they've lost a tablet that has 650,000 taxpayer ID numbers onto it, and they had left their tablet or their laptop in the back seat of their car when they went shopping. So we beg you not to leave the information unattended. If you have to work from home, then take the information home, but don't leave it in the cars. It's not good for the equipment either. Now, with shelving and file and record supplies, a lot of the times when I bid out to see different agencies, their information has been either piled up in a corner, and they're using paper boxes or coffee boxes or things of this nature. Please use a regular records box. We have a state standard there. It's on the state purchasing agency, and those boxes are available for a reasonable cost. But if you go through the office supply catalog, usually you'll pay way too much for those boxes, and they're not of good quality. Shelving is done the same way. A lot of the times we see the Rubbermaid shelving or the baker's racks used to store records on. The problem is they're overloading those shelves where they're going to end up imploding on themselves and collapsing. And I believe we do have a picture of showing what happens when you're using an inferior quality box. This picture was taken at the State Records Center. These boxes had just been delivered to us, and they had been in the Record Center about 10 minutes. But it took us over 80 man-hours to fix this problem, and so that we can track and find those boxes of records. So we're asking you, please use a quality box when you're storing records. Put the least amount of information possible on your records box. We had a case where we had an HR director say, we're going to send you some disciplinary actions. And so what I've done for you is to put in 2-inch high red letters, disciplinary actions for 2004. And the sad part about this is the next morning when we picked up those boxes, there were, administrators that had no business reading that information, and we had to do, and they ended up doing 3 more disciplinary actions for people reading information they should have written. So, but like I said, it's human nature to look at, and red seems to attract people's attention. So please, we have at the State Record Center 180,000 cards of records. We have records from every state agency out there. And what we do is we feel that the records are hiding in plain sight because all the records are labeled identically the same. So please don't put any more information on a box than is absolutely necessary, because there again, the information that you're using to find your records, if you're tracking it on Excel or Access, should take you right to the exact box that you're looking for. Now, the records departments, people have asked me, should they store records that are active and inactive together? It really doesn't matter, because there again, if the records are all tracked correctly, you can go right to the area that your information is being stored, and you have complete access to it. The one thing that also I don't recommend is reserving space for departments or subsets of departments or individual people. we at the Record Center store everything first come, first serve. Just in what we've had with several state agencies say, well, we're going to destroy 150 boxes of records, so we'll use those spaces for our new records. And that's not necessarily needed, because we will assign you new space numbers for the new records. So it's really first come, first serve is how spaces should be allocated. Now, the actual storage rooms, please keep the rooms clean. It's better for you, it's better for the paper, it's better for your health. And please use shelving, because it is a real high probability that if you're looking for a box of records or a book of records, they will be on the bottom shelf or near the bottom shelf. And so if you have to move 7 boxes to get to it, it gets to be real work to find that information. So if you use shelving, you can just pull the box right off the shelf and you'll have your information in a matter of seconds. And please keep critters out of your records rooms. And I'm talking 2-footed critters, 4-footed critters, 6-footed critters, etc. Not everybody in your agency needs access to the records room. Most records rooms, including my record center, you cannot be there unescorted without the records personnel. Not everyone needs access to records. And if you have an external records storage area, whether it's a building that is not attached to your regular facility, please make sure that the weather stays on the outside of the record or the building. We've seen many areas where, they're thrown into a condemned building or a leaky shed, and it's not appropriate and it's not healthy for the records or the staff that has to go and retrieve those records. Also, keep the records room locked at all times. I was out at seeing one agency, and their building was right on the main street, and they just opened the door, walked into the records room, and the comment was, well, we're all honest here, but yet we were looking at criminal records. And this is not something that everyone in the city needs to know about. So please keep the records room locked at all times. Now, this is our website for the Georgia Archives. And so this is the area that is located that you can find all of your retention schedules. And now we're going to switch over to the website and give you an idea of how and where to find those records. And according to this is the Georgia Archives website. If you go to georgiaarchives.com, you'll end up with ancestry.com, which is not what you're looking for. This is where you'll find retention schedules. If you hover over here on top of the state agencies and scroll down to the retention schedules, it clicks on that and you'll be more than happy to find that. Now, there are 2 places to look for records. Now, general records for business records and things of this nature, you'll be looking right here under the state government retention schedule. Excuse me. And here under the keyword search, you can just take a look and you'll find everything that you're looking for. If you're looking for personnel files, just type in personnel. And just hit go, and then here is your employee personnel files. It tells you exactly how long to keep them and whether they're vital or they're not vital, and how long to keep them. Now, if you're looking for accounts payable, accounts receivable records, okay, yeah, but that'll be on your specific ones. We'll get to that. Okay, sorry. Forgot you couldn't see that interchange here. Now, the other place to find your records retention information is, and this is for your department only schedules, is go to the state agency schedule that are not covered under your general schedule. And you can go through every state agency here, or which is more appropriate, to go and just, how can I get underneath that? Okay. And then just click down here for, this is always fun. There we go. And then you just go down to public health. This will give you access to all the records that are for the Department of Public Health. And so let's just look up birth records. And just hit that as in, and then hit your search button. And here are all your birth certificates right here. And so there it shows you all the birth certificates for everyone that was born in Georgia, and anything to do with the word birth you have right here. So you have every bit of information that you need to know to how long to keep the records that you're keeping. And so if you need to look for anything else, you can just go back, click. And then you have your records right here. So that gives you all the information and how long to keep each record right there. So that should help give you a handle on how long to keep any records. If you have any other questions on how long to keep records, you can contact either us at the archives, or you can Ms. Gwed can be able to help you with that information, or she will contact us and we will help her find that information for you. So if there's any other questions that we can have, on retention, we'll be more than happy to follow through on that. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Doug. So at this time, we're going to hand things over to Joe Little, because we've always received questions about specific forms that we use at the State Office of Vital Records and out at the counties. Things like your drop to paper forms, your long form death reports, amendments, paternity acknowledgments, and I think that's probably something that you're very much interested in. And so at this time, Joe is going to go over that information with you.
Good morning, everyone. As we walk through and visit some of the sites and have conversations on the phone, we usually receive questions in reference to what documents that we are able to keep and how long we should actually keep those document. So I have a few of them that we've had many of questions about. And I just want to go over it and make sure that everyone has the same retention schedule. And we'll send this out to you after this recording. And when we record this and put it on the website, you'll be able to pull it up. One of the first ones that I get is drop to paper documents. You receive these drop to paper from the funeral home on a daily basis, and they're kind of building up in your back room, and you want to know how long you need to keep them. At the state office, we agree that 3 years is the retention period that you should keep drop to paper. So you can start rotating them out If you've got some that's over 3 years, you're able to shred or get rid of those documents and work through and make sure that you maintain a 3-year cycle on those documents. The other one, and they are a little bit less now, it used to be the long form death reports. That used to be our main way of actually entering documents into Gavers. But now that we've got the county, the funeral homes, and some of the doctors on the Gaver system, we've got a lot less long forms. But they also share that same retention level, and that is 3 years. The next one is one that you probably are going to like, and that is paternity acknowledgement. You do a few of those paternity acknowledgements in your site, and what you end up doing is making copies of all of those documents and sending them into the state office, and then you retain your paternity acknowledgement copy just in case something comes up or the mother or the father comes up and have questions. But as of now, we're saying that you can keep yours until you check Gavers. As long as the update is in the system and we have completed everything that you have on that paternity acknowledgement, the birth certificate is looking exactly like the paternity acknowledgement, you are able to destroy that document that same day. The next one will be amendments. And we normally ask for the originals, so you may also make a copy of those. And if you check Gavers and we've made the correction and it's corrected then in the system, then you're able to destroy those documents that same day. And this last one, I've had many of questions in reference to this document, and it is a county document, but it's supplied to you by the state, or was supplied to you by the state. It's a disposition permit. The disposition permit is something that you would have to keep permanently, because that gives you your records of who disposed of what body, where they actually disposed the bodies of, and if there's any kind of catastrophe or something goes on in your county or in a statewide catastrophe, those records are very important in trying to locate and pinpoint what bodies were buried where, or how that body was disposed of. So that is the documents that I have listed on there. And the next one I have is custodial copies. The policy states that a hard copy record of a death or a birth that took place within the county is to be maintained on a file that is in that designated office. So if you have a copy or custodial copy, you need to retain those in your office. Until we actually get them in Gavers. And once they're in Gavers, you can actually destroy your custodial copies that day. So if you have old custodial copies and you've checked Gavers and they're not in Gavers, then you need to get in contact with the state office, and then we need to figure out why they're not in Gavers. But if you find out that you have custodial copies and they are already in Gavers, you don't need to keep those.
But you do need to document when you got rid of those records so that you can prove when you got rid of them.
Okay. And so that means that you probably need to keep a log?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that was the Excel spreadsheet that we were talking about earlier.
Okay. So if you keep your log. All right. We will take a moment and ask if anyone has any questions. As Gwen said earlier, if you have any questions, put it in the chat box and we will start addressing them as they come into the chat box.
So Doug, I actually had a question that came in from someone who wasn't going to be able to attend the session. And what they said was they had saved some of their documents like on a thumb drive. and they were copies, but they wanted to know how do they then save the thumb drive? What should they do if they save their documents on that? So can you address that question, please?
Well, one thing is that we recommend that you don't use a thumb drive to save it because there is no standard of a recognition on that thumb drive. So it can go south at any time. So if you're going to save electronic documents, save it on either an external hard drive or something of that nature, which is, can be backed up easily as well as replicated if necessary. So we don't recommend thumb drives to be used for storage.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Doug. So we're still waiting for more questions to come in, but while we're waiting, you kind of touched on this a little bit when you were talking about the boxes and the type of information. Can you speak specifically to what should be on that label? I know we always want to have the destruction date on our labels so that we're not holding on to boxes forever. If the retention period is 5 years, then we need to mark and label our boxes appropriately. So can you talk just a little bit about what specifically we need to have on that label?
Well, we prefer to have the bare minimum on the label, but basically what you want to have on there is if you are having, if it's a from to to, like if it's birth records for 2017 from A to C or whatever that case may be, or from January to March. However you're breaking it up is to put that information there. But what you don't want to do is to draw any more attention to that box. So please put it in black ink, not red or anything else.
Doug, there's another question that's came up, and it comes from Carrie McDermott, and she wants to know, can you go over the purpose of the spreadsheet again?
I certainly will. The main purpose of the spreadsheet, it has two purposes. The first one is if you can track any hard copy records that you have in your storage room, you'll be able to go right to the shelf of where those boxes are and pull up the information, because you should be able to have all the information that you have on the outside of the box in that spreadsheet. The second purpose is once that box has been destroyed, you can track that in a column on the spreadsheet to not only say when that box was destroyed and when it also who authorized it and how it was destroyed. The one thing else you might want to track on there for your live records is when the retention time, how long it is, and how long that box should be retained for. So when the appropriate time to destroy it is. And that way you can take a look at that spreadsheet and then go to your room and pull in any of the boxes that are due to be destroyed once they've been approved. I hope that answers your question.
All right. Thank you, Doug. Okay, so we've got another question here about how long should the birth and death requests from clients be kept? And I think we probably need a little bit more information on that to see if that has financial information on it or not. And it's probably one where we can actually pull the website back up and let's take a look at it.
Sure.
Let's pull the website, because I believe that information, the type of information on that document is probably more information with regards to the type of payment that was made and maybe the amount, so that may fall under financial or if it's an application. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to pull up here on the archives website, and we're going to look at that particular document. So you should still be able to see the screen. And let's just see. So as you see, we're at the Georgia Archives, and we went to the state agency specific retention schedule, and we're typing in search, and those are requests, and I believe those are like financial type documents. I'm not 100% sure. So here we've got requests for search of record files. I think we can probably scroll down some. I don't think that falls into that particular category. So there are all kinds of different request forms that are in here. Requests for search, requests for search of record files. So this one is, maybe it's more financial, of a financial type of document. So I think we probably need to look at that.
Well, I think you're looking for right here for the for names of death records with no fees involved.
So it's going to depend, the answer to your question, and I think if we can scroll back up, I think that was from Ms. Kitchens who said that particular question. We'll probably need to get a little bit more specific information to determine if there's fees that's involved or if not.
Exactly.
Because that will make a difference in terms of the retention period.
That is correct, because if there are fees involved,
it'll be a different retention
yes.
period. So that's Cheryl. Cheryl, so we get that question, and we'll follow up with you to get a little bit more specific information on your type of request, what type of information is on there, because that'll make a difference in terms of what, how long we would keep that particular record. Let's see, do we have any more questions out there? Still looking. Can this PowerPoint presentation be emailed? Absolutely. So you will receive a copy of this PowerPoint presentation. At the end, we always send them out, and we will make sure that we send it to everyone who has registered. So I see we got another question from
Don Wilkes.
Judge Wilkes, and his question is, could you please discuss custodial copies again? A customer came in and I didn't hear the discussion. Okay, so on the custodial copies, what we said was, you know, years ago, we our records management was probably not the best, and so a lot of the counties ended up with custodial copies that they have there, and they're actually copies of the original birth reports that we have here at the state office. So what we have said is, before you destroy any records, because we get that question a lot, can I destroy these records? We got to keep in mind that oftentimes the records you have are the originals that were never sent down to the state office. So what we ask you to do is to check in the Gabbard system. If that original is inside the Gabbard system, then you know that what you have there is a copy, and we've got the original here. But I would not say destroy them until you can actually verify that what you've got is a copy, and check that against what we've got in the Gabbard system. So until we know that, then I wouldn't say destroy them, but that's how you would kind of check that information. Okay, let's see what else we have. Okay, so the next question is, we have lots of records that have not been filed with the state. When will the state be able to add to Gabbers? Okay, so you got lots of records that have been filed with the state. So I think that's the same question, and maybe what you've got are copies, because you're saying that they've already been filed with the state office. So then those are copies that we have, that you have. So I just answered that particular question. That would be a custodial copy, once again, and that's something we need to check in Gabbers to make sure that we actually have the original in the system. Okay, and if we've got ones that have not been filed with the state, If they have not been filed with the state, now we've got something different, because now you've got a record you got the original, it was never filed with the state office, and it does not have a state file number. On those particular ones, and we do them on a case-by-case basis, you will contact the state office and let us know you got the original there. And again, we do it on a case-by-case basis. Please do not start sending all of your boxes of records without state file numbers down to the state office of vital records, but on a case-by-case basis as the customer comes in. But when they come in, contact us, send us that original. And what we will do is we will do a search here at the state office first to see if we got the record. Once we make that determination, we will issue a number for that customer, and then we will then input that record into the Gabbard system. But I want to make sure I'm very clear that with the ones that you have there without state file numbers, please do not send 30 boxes of records to the state office. We do them on a case-by-case basis. And those generally come to me. You know, I'm Gwendolyn Duffin. You guys have been scanning them to me, so you can continue to scan them to me. And again, on a case-by-case basis. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Okay, so now here's a question where we've got an application for birth and death record request with fee. So let's take a look at that in the system. So we'll actually go to the state archives website, and let's look at ones that have a fee. I think the one we looked at initially was no fee. So let's look. And so we're searching right now.
And it's right here. It's a regular request involving all certificates, and that's all the correspondence. So those requests where there's a fee charged, the request only has to be kept 1 year.
Where does it say fee?
Well, these are the regular, it says right here, regular requests. And I assume that.
So I don't want us to assume.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well,
let's look at it.
I'm just saying it's a regular request. So let's go back and put in here a different search term and the word fee. I'm getting it.
Okay, so there we go. So now we're looking at, on the second one there, 05.
That's a non-fee.
Okay, that's no fee. Okay, so 04050110, request for search of record files, Public Health Department. Regular requests for searches involving all certificates also includes correspondence where there are fees involved. And you see there, it's telling you that the retention period is 1 year. Okay. So, let's see what's our next question. Okay, we're looking for additional questions. What kind of safeguard does the state have if their computer crashes? So I think most systems have a backup. I'm not the IT person for that one, but I would say that there's probably a backup for all IT systems. But that one, I may have to get clarification on that. Okay, so I think that might be all that we've got time for in terms of the questions. And we want to be respectful of everybody's time. So if we didn't get to your question, will be able to answer them. Actually, your regional consultant will follow up with you. So I want to thank you, Doug, for a great presentation. We did record today's webinar, and so what we'll do is we'll send a link of the recording to the attendees, and we're going to also make it available on the website. So I do want to also let you know that there is an evaluation form and certificate that is available. So at the end of the presentation, you will see a link for the evaluation, and it will also send you a certificate. Now, I know in a lot of the offices, there are probably multiple folks that are watching the webinar, maybe from one computer, and if that is the case, please contact your regional consultant so we can make sure that we send you a certificate as well. So we want to make sure that everybody gets one, not just the person who has signed in. So please send that information to us. We continue to expand on our webinars, and we welcome all feedback, and we want to know what kind of future content you'd like to see for your webinars. So we want to once again thank you for attending our webinar on records management, and have a great day. Thank you.